Maybe KSP has a future after all. Kerbal Space Program 2, the entire franchise, as well as publisher Private Division, have reportedly been sold to a third party. The reports suggest that Private Division and its titles are now in the hands of a potentially respected group. These are former staff members of publishing label Annapurna Interactive. Now, if you're watching this video again, you're not going crazy, this is a re-upload. I've uploaded because previously I made a few mistakes, unintentionally suggesting that Annapurna was involved in the development of some of these games. That's not the case, they are purely a publishing label. So here's a new video with all the corrections, but everything else is pretty much the same. So what are Annapurna Interactive known for? Well, they've published some highly respected games, including The Outer Wilds, Journey, Stray, amongst many other titles. Now, to be perfectly clear here, the future of Kerbal Space Program 2, along with the many other titles from the Private Division label, still remains entirely uncertain. Yet one thing is clear, this has certainly been very much of a rollercoaster ride over the past year or so. In order to try and straighten that up a little bit, here's all the details on exactly where things stand right now. So the acquisition of all of this is a transition that involves a number of the ex-staff from Annapurna. How did they all get involved? Well, it turns out that Take-Two, former owners of all of these games as well as the Private Division label, sold all of this off to an investment firm called Havley Investments. And the investment firm in turn has got together with the ex-staff of Annapurna to take over the distribution of these newly acquired games. My understanding is that this information was originally published on Bloomberg and later posted to both Eurogamer, PC Gamer and elsewhere. It looks like the deal took place in November, and I do believe that at that point the purchaser was publicly unknown. The purchase itself does include all of Private Division's games, with the exception of one single title that is from Moon Studios, and it's No Rest for the Wicked. So that one's not included, but everything else is. So obviously, an investment firm is not going to be able to publish these games themselves, or at least it would not seem likely. So that's where the team come in from the ex-Annapurna staff. I did get that out eventually. So there is a story behind what happened with these staff members. Last year, there was a mass exodus from Annapurna Interactive, where a significant number of employees and staff simply left the publishing label, reportedly due to internal disputes and an unsuccessful attempt to spin off a new company called Verset. Ultimately, it seems that has kind of happened, as these individuals are now bringing their experience and passion to the publishing area management of Private Division's portfolio. So at the moment, there hasn't been any direct public statements about specific changes or updates to any of Private Division's games, and that of course includes Kerbal Space Program. But ultimately, this kind of gives a bit of an optimistic outlook to the future of the franchise. Whilst we don't know what it means for Kerbal Space Program, it's possible that the new company may pick up Kerbal Space Program 2 from where it stands currently and continue working on it, but it's equally possible that we may see another iteration of the game happening instead. All of this is speculation at the moment, no concrete plans or updates have been officially announced. Yet there's plenty of room for speculation here. I do think a lot of that is reasonable speculation. Now, obviously, a Kerbal Space Program 2 has, it certainly faced some significant problems since its release way back in early 2023, or rather its release into early access, that is. Now, straight out of the gate, the game had a lot of problems, both in terms of bugs as well as performance, but also in terms of missing content. There was an extensive roadmap with a lot of content planned for development and release further down the line. Now, that's not to say that KSP2 didn't get any updates at all. There were numerous updates, and they did improve things to a certain extent, at least in terms of performance and bug fixes. And it was a significant update later on that was called the For Science update, which introduced the unlocking of science capability for the game, giving it a little bit more of a theme and a little bit more direction. But the big updates, the things people were most looking forward to, of course, were interstellar travel between the different star systems, as well as colonization of different planets. This was a massive big deal, and on top of that, multiplayer features were also planned as well. So all of that is entirely missing and left out of Kerbal Space Program 2. Ultimately, that left the game in somewhat of a problematic position, not least with the players who had purchased the game and expected all those updates to arrive in due course. This led to some further problems because all of this was happening in somewhat of a vacuum. Neither Take-Two nor Private Division or Intercept Games, the developers of KSP2, made any official statements about what was going on with the game. Quite naturally, that led people to speculate because, well, there was a lot of reports within the media that Intercept Games was being shut down along with the private division. And no one knew exactly what was happening because whilst speculation ran rampant, there was no official confirmation. And for whatever reason, whether that was due to NDAs or something else, no staff from any of these companies were willing to talk about it. This in turn led to a whole spate of negative reviews over on Steam, which to this day have continued, leading up to an overwhelmingly negative score of just 6% on Steam. A lot of this due to people feeling that the game has been completely abandoned whilst in early access and still being sold for the very high price of £45. So obviously, if the new company and eventually a new development team, whoever that ends up being, want to pick up KSP2 where it stands right now, well, they've got a lot of work cut out for them because getting that reputation fixed and that user rating improved is going to take a long time. And let's be realistic here, improving a user score of 6% up to the positive range and perhaps highly positive is going to be, well, pretty much impossible, I would suspect. So what are the options for KSP2, assuming that the new company actually wants to pick it up? Well, it would seem there are a number of different options. One of them is, as already mentioned, picking up KSP2 where it stands right now and continuing with the development, although that seems perhaps the more difficult of the options. The second option would be to relaunch KSP2, giving it an entire fresh start, hopefully with a lot of bug fixes and revisions as well as some new content added in. This does have the potential to backfire a little bit because obviously it would leave the people who have already purchased the game feeling a little bit, well, how shall we say, left out, a little bit conned. So one way around that could potentially be to offer that game, the new version, highly discounted or even for free to the people who have already purchased it. And just to be excessively clear here, all of these potential options are speculation on my behalf. Again, there's no official statements either way. A third potential option is that we see an entirely new version of Kerbal Space Program sometime in the future. Maybe this would be a Kerbal Space Program 3 or an entirely different game leading the franchise in a different direction. Ultimately then, the future of Kerbal Space Program 2 is still somewhat of a mystery. It seems to be in a much better position now, perhaps potentially, than it was a few days ago, because at least we now know there is a company that owns the franchise, and that, well, kind of means that things aren't entirely in a limbo, and also the people who are going to be responsible for distributing any of these private division games, we know they do have a history of distributing some rather exceptional games in the past, back when they were working at Annapurna. Whatever way it goes though, obviously Kerbal Space Program 2 does have a rocky road behind it and potentially a rocky road ahead of it. There's going to be a lot of things to straighten out for the community to come back round and really have faith and trust in the franchise again. Although that said, Kerbal Space Program does remain perhaps one of the most respected franchises in video gaming. Very much enjoyed, and the original game is still doing very well indeed. A lot of people loving it. Ultimately, we'll have to see where all of this goes, but do let me know your thoughts and feelings about this in the comments section below. What do you think this could mean for the future of both KSP2 as well as the franchise as a whole? Thanks for watching this video all the way through. There is another one on the screen right here if you want to watch it. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time.